Hey, what's going on, guys? Mark here. I'm with my friends David and Nate. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, good, Mark. How are you, man?
Good, buddy. Thank you.
I'm doing great, Mark. Doing great.
Excellent, excellent. Today we have some really, really cool stuff for you guys. It's value pack. We're going to show you how to grow your PPL business past 10K per month. Revenue number. We're going to cover partner outreach, delivering leads, local lead gen, and even lead pricing. And I think we have a lot to go over. We want to move kind of quick. We don't want to take a lot of everyone's time. But having said that, I mean, you guys already know who we are. If you saw the last videos, there were some really solid content, and you got to know Nate and David a lot better. But let's just jump right into it. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So partner outreach, I know, David, you want to cover a lot of the stuff that you talk about in the course and whatnot. So I'm just going to pass it over to you, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, so partner outreach and getting into the CRM systems, one of the most important features is having all of your sales systems in, having all your sales in play into a CRM system, being able to take your sales notes with sending out cold emails and follow-up emails, and then having my sales guys take all the notes. That way we can all, when we start signing on the lead generation partners, we can have all the notes in one place. And so I go over into detail about using your CRM system. We get into the cold call. If you're not comfortable into the cold call, I have an entire module of getting over your fear and setting yourself up for success with presenting solutions and instead of just features. And so I go into how to do a realistic cold call with sales scripts that we have into there. If you're hitting up your Adwords or if you're hitting up directories with Home Advisor or Yellow Pages, go into a lot of that stuff to where you're going to set yourself up for major success. If you haven't done cold calls, if you're start doing cold calls yourself, or if you are hiring, or if you already have sales guys on board, then you can present these scripts to them, and you just have to get to know some scripts that I include. And once you memorize those, you just get into the actual cold call features. And from there, we just send up a follow-up email. We also use our CRM system to do a lot of the automation for that. So we can send up a follow-up email after the cold calls. And we take over people to our landing page. And so we use an agency site. So every single niche that we start off with, if you're getting into a niche, a new niche, or if you already have a niche that you're into, just recommend having a one-page landing page or a small niche agency website. So I go into a lot of the detail with that, and how important that is, as well as you can put a pixel on the landing page and take people back, over to a different landing page or any of that stuff. So it's super, super important to have, some information when you're sending up your follow-up emails and you're, sending people over to a landing page or a website. So that really is a key, component that I have an entire video in there. And then going over the closing call, this is one of the big issues I see with people when they're going into the close. They don't just ask for the sale. So I have an entire video of going into, asking for the sale, going into the closing call, having a script with that, and just being, ready for any objections or qualifications that you need to go into to close that right there. And then I have an actual bonus video that we'll put into there. So I have my agreement as well. And so that is pretty much like the partner outreach. And I go into obviously a lot more detail into that. So
That's awesome, man. You covered I love how this flows, because anyone listening right now, even without seeing the course, I mean, you gave some really solid advice. Like, look, grab your niche, make sure everything's together. I know you go into bringing people on to do the cold calling for you, right? And you have the scripts and everything people can swipe to train their sales guys on. And it just seems like a really nice system where they come in, look, you have your automation set up, you're tracking in the CRM, your marketing automation with the follow-up, you're pixeling them on the landing page, and then the one of the biggest things you just said, and I've seen this a million times in client work and just forever, even in just negotiations in general, even if it's not a, necessarily, a retainer or like a monthly fee or per lead fee, just in negotiations, people have people on the line. I mean, it's like hook, line, and sinker, and they just won't ask for the card. They just won't close the sale. And then people get an anxiety about it. So you having, a video just specifically for that, I think is really important. I've seen a ton of that in my day.
Yeah.
So, really solid, man. Super, super solid stuff. I forgot our last animation there. The audience hates me for that. So that's a nice animation. So next we're going to talk about how we're delivering the leads. And there's a lot more to this than you might think. I know a lot of times stuff like this is kind of passed off as, hey, it's a great passive way to diversify your income. There becomes, trying to manage this stuff in spreadsheets and whatnot is a nightmare. And, having said that, there's a lot of depth to it. There's just a ton of depth. So, yeah, how we're delivering the leads. Nate, is this something you want to talk about, or?
Yeah, this is definitely in my arena of the
Excellent.
technical world. Now, I know some of the content that David has where he talks about partner qualification is going to help ease some of the burden where we're dealing with clients or partners that aren't picking up the phone or aren't closing sales or aren't doing what they need them to do. However, even with a properly qualified partner on the other side of the deal, the main things that you're going to need in place is, number one, obviously a solid call tracking system. The bulk or majority of your leads in most cases, especially in the local lead generation space, are going to be phone calls, whether that is a phone call directly from an ad or a phone call from a landing page that somebody's clicked through on an ad. Now, the call tracking can be done through a system like we have, such as Jensen.ai. There are a number of other solid call trackers around, and kind of just choose whichever you're most comfortable with. You are obviously going to want to be recording your calls so that you can confirm or deny the validity of a lead. There are going to be some cases where you have a client, perhaps in the legal space, that doesn't want you to be recording calls. At that case, you're going to need to drop down to just appear time on the phone or how long the call lasted to determine the qualification of a lead. Now, you are also going to have form submits. And I know, working with you, Mark, this is something that we've seen a lot of people kind of let slip through the cracks. And there are I don't want to say very simple, but relatively simple ways that you can get your form submits to be automatically flipped to both you and your client at the same time. So you can, number one, make sure that they're getting form submits, but also make sure that you are following up with them, especially up front, that you're making sure that they understand that a form submit is a valid lead, and it is going to be more valid if they respond to it as quickly as possible, because every minute or hour that you let whether it's a form submit or a voicemail, doesn't get a returned call, that is going to reduce the likeliness that that lead's going to convert into an actual person that purchases a service or a product. Now, the other thing that we go over and that you should implement in any of your lead gen campaigns is an SMS and email follow-up for missed calls. So anytime you detect that there was a missed call, you sent a call to a partner and they didn't answer it, you need to make sure that you deal with that as quickly and immediately as you can. You don't want to look back over a week and say, oh, wow, I had 20 calls that I sent to this partner and they picked up 5 of them and 15 of them went to VM. And now I just, on Friday afternoon, as I'm doing my requisition of the leads, realized that none of the leads were actually getting answered. So that is going to be a huge thing. And another thing you're going to want to do, the opening period or the beginning 1 or 2 weeks, maybe even longer, depending on the partner, you're going to want to be very judicious about reviewing the leads as they come in, making sure that you can identify issues early, whether that's an issue with your call tracker. We've seen numbers of times where, whether it's Twilio or CallRail or Jensen or CallFire, that they can just be issues with call tracking numbers and how they connect to your clients. That is super important to catch immediately. You should be testing that up front. But there are also issues that you can identify, like perhaps your partner is rude on the phone and he needs to be spoken to about how to properly intake a lead, or he needs to maybe have a sales guy deal with that. So making sure that in the initial period that you're just keeping a close eye on the leads and the lead flow as it comes through. And then finally is going to be some sort of mechanism for keeping an up-to-date summary. So especially if you're in the pay-per-lead model and you're not just doing a flat rate, where if someone's buying a lead from you for a certain amount of cost and they're buying X amount of leads and you've let slip, let's say you have 5 to 10 campaigns running and you're not watching them very closely and you let slip that you've either been sending extra leads over the budget that you're not going to be able to charge for, or you're going to be charging more than they expect. Just making sure that you have a central place where you can view all of your leads at a glance, make sure that everybody's on schedule. You can identify issues where maybe you stopped generating leads, you generated 100 in the previous 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden you've only generated 2 or 3. That's going to be an immediate issue that you need to look at your landing pages, your ads. That's going to be super important. So that is kind of my take on delivering leads. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that, Mark or David?
I have a tiny thing, if I can jump in and throw it in there. And this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but we found it helps, especially in situations where, just to dial back to form submits, they do go to waste more times than not. And a lot of that is due to the fact that there's not solid follow-up in place. And what we have found to be an amazing remedy for that, and it's still something we're gathering data on, but we have a lot of data behind it. I mean, 6 figures plus behind it, just testing it out. And that's getting the number in a form or even a Facebook lead, or, getting a long form submit through a Facebook lead, getting the phone number and programmatically connecting that into a phone call, I think is probably the future of form leads, in my humble opinion, where it just attempts to completely take it just takes the form lead out of it a bit if we can connect it into a phone call right away. Does that make sense how I stated that? I think that's a really valuable way to deliver the leads, and refining that over time, I think, is the future of a form lead.
Yeah, that definitely
100%.
makes sense. And I kind of glossed over that. I had a little bit of a brain freeze. But yeah, so what Mark was referring to is technology that we have inside Jensen, as well as some other softwares that do this, where you can actually programmatically take any form submit, and as long as there's a phone number input that they have entered into the form, the system can go ahead and automatically wire up a conference call where the form submitter gets a phone call. Once they answer, they get put into a waiting room, and then the agent or your contractor or partner will then receive a call and say, hey, you've got somebody waiting for you. And then they're connected. And now there is the form submit is basically transparent, if you will, and it is instantly turned into a phone call.
Yeah, I just feel like that's the future, because there is a lot of people are getting busier and busier, right? There's so many times where, sometimes people want to talk to someone right away. Sometimes I'm in a conversation at a dinner or a get together, and I'm like, wow, I would love more information on what they're talking about, but I don't want to jump on a phone call during dinner. I'm going to go ahead and fill out a form and, whatever. So the form leads still do happen, but attempting to turn it into a phone call, I think, is solid.
Yeah,
I really think that's the way forward. More times than not, you won't be interrupting a dinner or something like that. You'll just be kind of getting them on the phone quicker than the competitors. So that's the only thing
I've seen that from different niche standpoints too. When people do fill out the leads, it's not necessarily that sometimes they're busy as well. They do just want to fill out the form lead, and then other times that they just don't want to pick up the phone and they want to have someone call them, thinking that they may already be getting an estimate or a quote or whatever it is for whatever niche. And I think that is such a special feature. And the same thing with the the SMFs with the follow-up calls, we started off, having missed calls with partners. And one of the big things that we see with partners falling off, especially on a smaller local level, was then just missing calls. So having that feature of sending out an SMS for a missed call, but now how we present it in a really great structure is just simply, hey, you won't be successful if you do miss calls. And so we tell them that kind of straight up, and it works really well. So they stop missing calls.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lead delivery doesn't sound fun until you realize, again, there's just a massive amount of depth to it. And doing this right can make you a lot more money and provide a better experience for your partner.
Yeah.
So anything else we want to cover on how we deliver leads, or are we ready to jump right into the next section?
I think we're ready for the next section.
We are ready. Local lead gen. This is the fun stuff. I mean, even more fun. This is all about making the money and the honey, baby, right? This is generating the leads that people will pay for.
Yeah, so in terms of local lead generation, now this is obviously pretty much 100% what we've centered around with the Leads Academy. There is lead generation that you can do in a number of different industries that aren't local service-based businesses. You can do lead generation for instance, software companies, all sorts of different ways. But what we really want to do is we want to compete with local businesses. So if you go right now and you go into the top 10 major cities across the country and you look for fairly high CPC AdWords, high competition keywords in the AdWords platform, you type it into Google and you just start looking through the landing pages and the websites that are ranking, it becomes very apparent that there might be one or two of these companies that has a somewhat competent marketer working with them, but the vast majority of local businesses are not prepared to be doing digital marketing or marketing at all. They are focusing on either being a lawyer or a dentist or a painter, whatever it is, that's what they spend their time focusing on. So when we come in with our marketing skill set, where we actually know how to create landing pages that convert, we actually know how to run AdWords campaigns, we know the ins and outs of the digital world, it becomes a much easier thing to do to come in and compete with these companies. So if you come in like in a pest control niche, you'll see tons of space in the pest control niche where even though there's a bunch of marketers in it, you can still be in plenty of geos where the dominating companies that are sitting at the top of the SERPs, whether in AdWords or organic, are just local businesses that happen to be there that really don't necessarily deserve to be there on the merits of their digital marketing. So that's the first thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, is that the reason that we're doing this is because it's so easy for so many different industries to kind of hop in and just dominate the actual local businesses themselves. Now, the next thing I wanted to touch on that we go all the way through in the Leads Academy is the importance of having a multi-channel strategy. So you can start off with, maybe it's an SEO site that you've been working on for a few months, and all of a sudden it starts generating leads and you're starting to sell the leads and there's some revenue coming in. Or maybe you're starting off with an AdWords campaign, or maybe you're just starting off with a GMB. But when you get your campaign to a certain level of maturity, you are going to want to start to stack other channels. So if you start with any one of those that I just mentioned, when your campaign is mature and generating revenue, you should have all three of those. And then once you have all three of those nailed down, you should be thinking, okay, is there anything else I can do? Can I maybe have a Web 2.0 site, a parasite site that I can rank for just a specific keyword within the niche? Can I go and maybe rank 2 sites on the first page of Google? Can I have multiple AdWords campaigns? Can I kind of just saturate the front page? How do I take up as much SERP real estate as possible? And that's going to give you an added bonus where you're just going to start generating more leads and more leads. You add a Bing campaign to your already profitable AdWords campaign, then start to leak in a couple extra leads a month. And that's the really the last piece to the puzzle as you start to grow a lead gen campaign, is adding on other channels. Once you've kind of dominated the SERPs and gotten everything that you can out of Google, can you go to some of the other third-party channels? Can you go into Craigslist? Can you go into all of these other places that you can generate leads? There's tons of ideas that you can do outside of organic results or AdWords at all. So that's one of the main things that we kind of harp on, is the importance of not just sticking with one thing and making sure that you're spreading your net pretty far and wide. And the third thing, and this definitely, I hope, shows itself in a lot of my training, is the keep it simple, stupid principle. And that is, at the end of the day, we want to have results, and you get results by, especially in local lead generation, by keeping it as simple as possible. So setting up simple AdWords campaigns up front, setting up relatively simple landing pages, making sure that everything is just there, done, looks good enough, and then start getting in your data and start optimizing after the fact. So that has been a huge thing that has helped in our lead gen business, and it is something that everybody should be applying, not only to lead generation, it applies to a bunch of different parts of the world or parts of business. It is a incredibly important philosophy, and it's something that I think really comes through in my training. And the last thing is, that kind of brings us all together, is that you need to make sure that you are, from day one, minute one, tracking everything. So if you're generating phone calls, you need to make sure that you have your call conversion firing off. If you're generating form submits, you need to make sure that you're tracking all of those. You should be going through with your client, your partner, and trying to track which leads actually turned into successful jobs. Because if you have an AdWords campaign running and you have it set that maybe every call comes in as a conversion, but we don't have the actual data on which of those calls or conversions, quote unquote, actually converted in the real world to a service rendered, then you're not going to really have a full picture of your campaign to be able to come and look at your ads and say, okay, maybe these are the most important ads, or these are the most profitable ads. So I think all of those things put together is the foundation that we try to provide, or that we do provide in the Leads Academy. So once you go through and you watch all of David's training, and you watch all of the training that Mark dropped in there, and you watch all the training that I put in, that is going to be teaching all of these things and giving you the foundation where you can confidently go into any local service-based niche, any local business, and say, hey, let me generate leads for you, and let me see if I can beat whatever your current lead generation strategy is. Or if they don't have a lead generation strategy, then that's going to be an even better sale. But you will find that the companies that you want to work with are already going to be turned on to lead generation and buying leads and trying to fill their pipeline.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. One of the most probably tedious, for some people, tedious tasks it's never done. Even with agencies, I see that it's rarely done, is the tracking everything. Even if you find, you can find someone for $10-12 an hour, on Upwork from Eastern Europe, that can go in and set up all of your analytics, your Google Tag Manager, if you don't like it, or you don't have someone in-house to do it, or, your VAs aren't quite adept at the GTM and whatnot. Like, having that stuff so important. Knowing your numbers is just, you can't operate without that, and ever operate where you have true profitability. So I think that's so important, and it's often just turn the ads on, or let the leads come in from organic or whatever, and just rank and bank. And without knowing your numbers, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Like, everyone should take heed to that and do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's a really key part is just keeping that super simple, putting your AdWords campaign up there, and with you tracking everything, you're going to know what you're spending and what you're profiting, if you're profiting at all. Usually with our campaigns, we're not profiting within the first week, 2 weeks, sometimes even 3 weeks. And so that's completely fine. Like, as long as you're tracking everything and you're keeping it simple, and then you upgrade your AdWords campaign or your landing page or your website or anything like that, it's key to have that all tracked. So that way you can just keep it moving with that.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. All right, lead pricing. This is really cool. So I want to run through these just in this order. It doesn't have to be in this order, but the first thing you want to do, and this is just good communication with the client or the partner, what have you, is make sure you understand the parameters of a qualified lead and what that means to different people. It can definitely mean radically different things. And I know Nate touched on this a bit earlier with deliverability. You know, are you selling a call that is a certain length? Are you charging per form lead? And if so, how much? Is it at a reduced rate, than what a call is? There's some people that don't want a lead at all. They want an appointment booked, right? And that falls within the realm of lead gen as well. If you can, we'll get into this more at line 4, the price ascension model. But, there's a lot of great ways to, increase the power of the lead or what you can charge for the lead. But, I think the biggest thing is just making sure that there's clear communication on what a qualified lead is. That also lets you know what channels you can really tackle. If someone says we don't want any form leads, that means a qualified lead to them is a call. Okay, is it a certain length? Do they have to have a certain intent? Obviously people aren't going to pay for spam and sales calls no matter what the length is, and they shun it, right? So, it goes back to having the system that allows someone to mark a call as spam or a sales call or what have you. But just knowing that up front, it allows you to kind of be flexible and understand what your pricing looks like. If someone only wants calls that meet, certain parameters and they won't take form leads, your cost per call has to be a bit higher. There's going to be a lot of wasted leads, or, you're going to have to programmatically turn them into a phone call, what have you. And there's a lot of other things to consider. What one person's qualified lead, is that's fine, but that doesn't mean if it's not a qualified lead for them, you can't still sell the data. So the biggest takeaway from this would be good communication, price intelligently based on what they're asking for. I've seen some insane offers where they want a multiple minute phone call. Mostly, probably some of the most insane you're going to see are in the tort space or like the rehab space, where they want ridiculous length of call, or they literally want the people to have certain like medical docs and whatnot for in the tort space. So, understanding that up front is going to save you your sanity and money. And again, also line up something else. Line up somewhere a situation where someone will buy the data or buy the leads. That might sound crazy, but it's very popular. I just got hit up by a guy who said, we'll take all your junk leads. And of course you're not going to make a killing on it, but just that additional monetization can help fuel the campaign. So that even includes creative monetization, where you generate a lead. That lead, just because it's for a specific niche, it doesn't mean it can't benefit multiple niches or multiple other businesses. It's just, you have the data, so be intelligent with it and make sure you're monetizing it. The next point is, this has been beaten to death. It's the exclusive versus non-exclusive leads. Look, there's huge companies that make their money selling non-exclusive leads, and they do really well. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys don't ever sell non-exclusive leads. Don't ever mess around and try to be a home advisor in your specific niche, which, that's a tall order to fill. But regardless, there's a lot of companies that make a lot of money doing it. I'm not saying don't do it, but, this is more for the sales portion. When you say, hey, I'd like to sell you leads. Well, what's the difference between you and home advisor, you and networks, or whatever space you're in? There's lead gen people. There's lead gen companies selling non-exclusive leads, most likely. And you having exclusive leads, making sure you'll work with them on the qualifications like we just talked about, that's going to set you apart, where you're really kind of tailoring the campaign to make sense for the business. And I think that's where a lot of the idea of the partner comes into play. You're gonna take the additional steps needed to make sure they see an ROI by using your lead gen services or buying your leads, what have you. So it gives you a really good angle on the sale, and that's about it. But I'm not saying non-exclusive leads can't be monetized and very profitable, right? Especially when you start to get into lower dollar niches where, for example, if you're like appliance repair, you're selling, $10, $15 leads, or you could sell $5 leads to 5 companies, and you just 2.5 times your gross revenue on that one lead. And as long as you're transparent about it, don't be unethical about it, but it's definitely an avenue to explore. You're just going to have a lot of trouble, I guess, cutting through the noise and what really differentiates you from the rest of the crowd that's doing the same thing and probably at a much bigger scale than you. That leads us right into the number 3, pricing that makes sense. I know a lot of people, I think, stepped into the lead gen business under the assumption that there was going to be these magical niches that paid out thousands of dollars per lead and percentages of jobs left and right. And listen, that can happen. Nate and I actually had a pretty cool situation that pays points on the job, and they have paid out. We've gotten money from it. That's just it's not common that you're going to find that, and the tracking of that becomes near impossible. You have to have a phenomenal relationship with whoever's doing those numbers, and even then it's really hard to track without getting really deeper into their business that they're going to allow most vendors or contractors or whatever they consider you. So in that case, the pricing just has to make sense. There's not a formula that works 100% of the time. I'm sorry to say that, but I'd rather be honest rather than sell you guys on adding a few numbers together and looking at a few things and just hitting the nail on the head every time. That's unrealistic. Try to work backward. This is why when I talk about sales, I talk a lot about a discovery process. Anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows I'm a stickler for the discovery process. You should do a lot more listening than talking. Your initial call, which you can close right off of if you spin, but your initial call, for me anyway, when they're actually in the sales process, not the cold call. They're interested. You're doing the discovery. My stuff's more interview-like. I'm asking questions that's basically going to allow me to take notes on that and spin it right into the sales pitch. I'm identifying all of their issues, and I'm able to spin that. But having said that, the things I'm looking for, like what's your average profitability on a job? And that's going to be a complex answer because in a lot of cases, people have a bunch of different services or, again, it's not just a roof. There's a ton of different roofing systems and they all come with different pricing models and profitability. So working backward from that and understanding, okay, if their average profit on a job is, I don't know, let's say $3,000, what are they really going to pay to get that job? And you're going to have to dial back from there and say, okay, if they end up paying $500 or $600 for each job I bring them, maybe even a bit more, right? If they pay $700, $800, they're still at a pretty decent level of profitability, considering they don't have to do anything for that acquisition besides pay us for qualified lead. So that was just that was off the top, just spitballing. But that's how I work backward to determine lead pricing. Another great way is once you actually start and use David's system and Nate's system with Adwords, where David's system is where you're finding a niche that you're just going to completely own. You're making your brand revolve around this niche, and then you're running AdWords in that niche, just like Nate teaches, which is a phenomenal system. He taught me that system. I use the system, and we've had pretty good success with that, Nate. So it works. I'm living, breathing proof. So having said that, once you see what you're paying per lead through a system like that, it's a lot easier. Obviously, lead prices are going to change based on what market you're running ads in. Obviously some little, little more rural area, or just a non-competitive small town or suburb, it's going to run a lot cheaper than a big market like Los Angeles, New York, Austin, Dallas, whatever. But it still gives you start to gain a lot of the benefit from being niched down and say, hey, I know on average what my leads cost through this campaign. Here's the markup I want to make, and go from there. So unfortunately, it's not a push button or like a magical formula that works every time. But, a lot of the stuff out there teaching you how to price your leads, it might work here and there, but it just isn't consistent. You have to know what the person can spend and what it costs for you to generate them. Moving right along, I'm sorry if I'm talking fast, but I don't want to take a bunch of time. I'd rather stuff you guys with a ton of value and let you go about your day. The price ascension model is one of my favorite things to talk about. And that's basically what can you do, and this is another big thing to help you differentiate yourselves from competitors. It's already solid selling leads. It's not like a pay and pray situation. There's something tangible they're buying, quote unquote tangible. They pay for the lead. They get on the call, right? It's a very easy process to sell. Having said that, how do you charge more, or how do you continue to set yourself apart? And that's through different price ascension models. And this can be as simple as saying, hey, instead of sending you every call and all the spam calls, you're going to take from number one what you learned that what they consider is a qualified lead. You're going to take that, and you can hire a call center. You can have someone in-house do it. You can pretty much be their intake process, where you can kind of lightly vet them and say, okay, this isn't going to work. And that also gives you control of the end call. So we talk a lot about deliverability systems and whatnot, where they're coming in through, of course, probably I'm assuming everyone uses Jensen AI, right, guys?
Yep.
Yeah. No. It's like, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsors, Jensen.ai. No, I'm kidding. But, we talk a lot about that, but controlling that call on the other end, whether it's through a call center you hire or a staff member under your roof, or that works for you, that allows you to control that data, right? You're still controlling that call. So even if it might not be a qualified lead for them, it might be a qualified lead for someone else, or you have someone local that'll pay for that data, and you can kick that call away, right? It's like, okay, these guys don't want to do roof repair. I know I'm stuck on roofing for this conversation, but just to keep things kind of seamless, we'll stick with it. I know a ton of roof contractors that will not take roof repair, even though X% of roof repair leads convert to new roof jobs. They get there and say, look, we can't repair this. You need a new roof. Your roof is jacked, right? And a lot of that comes down to salesmanship. Depending where you're at, there's the whole conversation about hail damage. Look, you have hail damage. Insurance will cover this new roof anyway. It's all about a sales process. But a lot of contractors, they don't like being put under the gun like that. I just have so many roofers that were like, where you don't want repair leads. But there's a ton of roofers that'll take them. So lining something up where, hey, we need a roof repair. Sure. Let me put you down into our second tier of contractors or whatnot. And Nate, we know a guy that does that. He has kind of a little group in his area, and he routes calls, and he never wastes a lead, right? Even if it's a little bit lower dollar or whatever the deal is, he never wastes a lead. He kicks it to someone and makes some money. But also, having said that, because you're cutting out that riffraff and they're getting the top quality vetted lead, you can bump the lead price up. No one else is doing that, right? Not to say no one else, but a lot of these big companies, they just send you junk leads, right? So it kind of sets you apart. And taking that a step farther, what if you then say, hey, let us get access to your calendar, and we'll sit and just book the appointments for you. And that can be anything. That doesn't even have to just be an estimate to go see a roof. I mean, that could be any business that requires an appointment. At that point, that's now a booked appointment. So if the company knows their numbers, they can see the difference between how many jobs get closed out of just a raw phone call before it gets vetted, before they say, hey, we don't do jobs that small, or we don't install those roofing systems, or we don't travel that far to work, right? Like their call to close ratio is obviously going to be a lot smaller than their, hey, we're going to do an estimate to close ratio. Does that make sense? Like that's going to be a vastly different. So that leads now even more expensive. Now, if you can just keep, and this now moves us right into the bolt-ons, what more can you do to make it a more valuable lead, or to kind of get, not just to get more money from the business, but to, empower that business to make more money off your leads? And if you're empowering a business to make more money off the leads, then you shouldn't feel bad about taking some additional money. And this can include stuff like lead nurturing, marketing automation, setting up their CRM systems, actually going in and wiring up so they can see like A to Z attribution, what an organic lead costs them compared to what type of profitability they see on an organic lead, AdWords, Facebook, what have you. Being able to detail all of that out, it's invaluable, not just for you to know the number, not just for them, but for you too. And all of that stuff is outside, is outside the it's outside the scope of selling someone a lead. So not only can these bolt-ons help ascend the price that you can ask for lead or per appointment, or for, some people even do job close type stuff. And that's, again, it's really hard to track. It can be super profitable, but it's a little hard to track, and the capital, it doesn't come quite as quick as just selling a lead, where bang, there's a lead, bang, there's $70 or $100, $200, whatever. It requires you to have a little bit more capital up front as you wait for them to close the leads, but what have you. And then again, there's all these bolt-ons where you're setting up their sales systems, you're setting up kind of their back office, and you're helping automate reminders for appointments and estimates and stuff, so they make sure the end user shows up. We make sure the contractors or the business owners know what they're doing. So that's just something I think, the whole conversation of lead pricing for me goes far beyond what can we charge per lead and let's move on to the next person. For me, it's like, hey, you already have someone giving you money. Like if you continue to deliver value, they'll continue to give you more money. And there's a lot of bolt-ons, and there's a lot of ways to improve the quality of the lead to do both of those things. So,
yeah, 100% agree on that, and that really scales your system. And specializing in a niche and going down that route is obviously my route. And when you get into that and you learn the nitty-gritty of that niche, and once you kind of gain that knowledge to how the entire system works on their end, when you gain enough partners and you can ask enough questions, then you can figure out where they are having problems, and coming up with that solution by providing a CRM system, or helping with their sales process, from what you hear from maybe some of your successful partners. So having all those kind of bolt-ons dramatically improve, because there's always like the 80-20 rule. There are partners that you are going to make 20% of your partners, you're going to make 80% of your revenue from. So there's some big partners in, and you want to invest your time to help them out. And then you identify the little small partners that maybe they don't want to expand, but they're just kind of an add-on that you can give them. But when you can really expand into your market and expand and help those partners by providing those bolt-ons and those add-ons, they just dramatically separate you to where you solidify that relationship, right? So if anybody else does come and offers a lead price maybe a little bit under yours, that relationship is already there. It's solidified. You've added major value to their business, and it's a simple, hey, I'm not interested. So that's a beautiful model for adding the bolt-ons there. So
yeah, absolutely. I just got a pop-up during this call that our one or during this Webby that our one lead gen efforts just got an appointment set, and that's the case of where the company's paying $400 per set appointment. They don't buy leads or phone calls. And our guy just booked an appointment. I just got the notification for it. And that lead, selling as a lead, would typically be $50 to maybe $80. So it just shows you that, go into that next level. And it's all about following the system, guys. So if you guys don't have anything more to add, let's just kick to the last side and talk about just following the system, right? So essentially, what we want to do is just what we talked about, where if you want to take your $70 leads and turn them into $400 appointments, right? If you want to start knowing your numbers, if you want to start scaling a sales team, okay, that's essentially what we came together. Initially, this was David and Nate's thing. We started just talking more about it, and I said, man, I just, I'll contribute some some stuff to this for sure. And this really became the powerhouse of lead gen teachings, in my opinion, just because of how it flows. You follow David's initial modules where you're diving in, you're finding your niche, you're scaling your sales prowess, your sales teams, the processes, just using his scripts, his training. You're setting up the CRMs like he tells you. You're getting all of this stuff set up. It goes right into Nate's. That's literally how this thing flows. It goes right into Nate's, where he's showing you how to rapidly generate leads. You put in, you put in a quarter or 50 cents, you pull 75 cents to $1 back out. It's consistent, it's quick, and it scales, right? And then it drips right to me, where I talk more about the organic aspect of it, getting your site set up, how to kind of pull some leads out of those as quick as possible. And that's it. I mean, it's a very proven, defined system, and it is live. It is live for you guys today. It is the Leads Academy. If we can just pop over extremely quickly, we can just pop over here. We can see that. I mean, this is the current curriculum, and I know I personally have more videos to throw in, and I think you guys are done. I have a few more videos to throw in, but already this curriculum is hard hitting. This is not fluff. This is exactly what we do to use our to do our lead gen business. Sorry.
Yeah, and for those that are listening and watching, the URL to get here is going to be course.theleadsacademy.com, and that will put you on the initial landing page. You can then click the enroll button. You can find this actual course curriculum, so you can go through it, and then from this page you can go ahead and opt in. That I actually, in light of what you just said, I do have a few extra modules that I'm planning on putting in over the next month and a half here. And we also have an onboarding doc that when you sign up for the course, there's just 2 simple questions that we're going to ask you. And based off of the answers to those questions after this first launch, we'll kind of loop back around and look at what videos could be added to answer those questions if we haven't already added them. And we'll be kind of building the library through user requested content.
Amazing. So that's it, guys. The course is live. Listen, for a very limited time, we're giving you half off. This course is already so cheap, in my opinion. I think we could have thrown another $1,000 price tag on it. I easily think we could have sold this for $2,000. We didn't. Not only did we put a cheap price tag on it for a limited time. I don't know how long, maybe 3, 5, 7 days. Would just depends how many people that get in and the feedback we get. We're gonna shut it down, and it's gonna bump up to its original price. So 50% off for the first couple days, and just for you guys, I know you're gonna love this. Make sure you get in there and use it. If we can do it, you can do it. I mean, we all come from vastly different backgrounds, and I know Dave's crushing it. Nate and I do some cool lead gen stuff together. Like, this is what it is. We didn't leave anything out. So 50% off for a limited time. Go grab it, guys. TheLeadsAcademy.com.